Hey folks, welcome to That Photo Feeling. I'm your host, Andy McSweeney. How do you feel about your photography? Good to great to awesome, I hope, or at least on its way there. And let's see what today's show can do for you on that front. As I chat to amazing and awesome dance, portrait, and all-around commercial, but amazingly elegant fine art photographer, Stephan Bollinger. He shared some time, like he has been over the last 9 months that I've gotten to know him, on Clubhouse, that social media app where more than a few photographers are lurking and talking and sharing and all that sort of thing. And he's been doing it elegantly and beautiful, as well as just like he did on the show today, on this episode. Even though I'm not elegant and beautiful with my chit-chat, my confidence, and the flow of my conversation. Man, the guy is so good, you'd think he's a public speaker or an ex-performer, and gee, he is, and we talk about that too. So make sure to listen for that, as well as towards the end of the chit-chat, some talk about his body positivity program that he's taking to high schools in Australia that I think is well worth noting, because body positivity is a good thing, I like to think. So yeah, we have all that, and the only thing I have to say before we get to it is just a reminder that the release schedules are in free flow right now, so make sure to subscribe to this channel wherever you're hearing it on the podcast networks, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, etc. Or maybe watching the video feed of this over on youtube.com/Andy McPhoto, because I do like to get the visual side when I can, especially as a photographer, but certainly as a podcast chit-chat host. So yeah, while you're over there, hit subscribe. It really makes a difference, and likes and all that stuff too. But having said all that, I know you're probably here for Stephan. So why don't we get to that chit chat with Stephan? Enjoy. So you're in your studio at the moment. You have a fairly big studio. Is that part of your reception and everything?
No. That's my production studio. I have a photo studio, but I have a production studio here as well. So yeah, the old muso will never get rid of his music, so I built myself a recording studio.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, you were quite serious into music for a while. You were a performer in Berlin, according to your LinkedIn, at the least. I'm still looking for video of some of your performances.
You know what? There is actually some real advantage to having done that before YouTube. Because yeah, some of the stuff was, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was great. I've done it for quite a long time, but yeah, like I always say, if you remember the 80s and 90s, you haven't lived it. And I'm quite happy that some of the band stuff and some of the musical theater stuff that I've done, that it's not on YouTube. I have some VHS somewhere of that stuff. I might have to digitize that one day, but yeah, I've worked in this industry. It was pretty incredible, but you're never home. You know, you cannot have a family. You cannot have kids. You're so limited because you're at the theater 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 o'clock. You're 5 to 6 o'clock. You're in makeup. Then you're not home until midnight. And if you want to perform 8 shows a week, you have to be, in bed, sleep, have your 8 hours of sleep. That means if you have kids, they would already be on the way to school when you actually wake up. So when would you actually see your kids? Never. So, there comes an age where you had your more than 15 seconds of spotlight, and you retire, and then what else creative thing could I do? And well, photography is quite close to that. So
yeah. With the music side of things, so you were essentially just, the schedule basically starts taking over. I assume at this point you had gathered a little bit of family, because I know you have kids and everything. I guess just to pick up on that, how did you see photography at that point? Were you already taking photos next to the music?
yeah, well, I picked up my first camera. I don't have it here. I should have it here. I picked up my first camera 40 years ago. So I was always running around with the camera, always, but not as a professional. Actually, I was really not, even now, I'm not really interested in cameras at all. I mean, for me, it's just a tool. I find it funny when people are having those conversations, Nikon versus Canon versus Sony versus Panasonic, or no, the Fuji colors. I think I don't care. I just couldn't care less. For me, it's a question of what comes out of it at the end, and that's how I always photographed. I mean, even in my music days in recording studios or on stage, I was always running around with the camera. Not that I had an idea what I was doing, just to be very clear. I had no freaking idea what I was doing, but I had fun because you could create something and it lasts. And that was always my fascination with photography. So I never cared about lenses or cameras or any of that. All I cared about was what was coming out of it. And of course, as I said, I had no idea what I was doing. But some film roles worked out and some film roles didn't. But that was okay because I was paid to sing. I was paid to perform. So nobody paid me to take photos. The funny thing is, though, you reach a point where you start to get the hang of those things. You start to figure out what that A does on that camera and what a difference it makes if you put a different film in it. I mean, now digital cameras, you just change the ISO, but that was the decision. What kind of film do you put into your camera? And you have to figure that thing out first, because you just go into a camera store and you say, well, I need a film. And they look at you and like, yeah, we got lots. What do you want? I said, like, I have no idea. Give me a film. I know I want it in color. And then they look at you and like, well, ASA what? I'm like, what is that ASA? Just give me a film. But over time you get the hang of it. And then there's a huge advantage working in the theater, because when you think about it, you have maybe 6 soloists in a production or 12 soloists in a production, and then you have a choir and you have live musicians, and all of them have a contract for, let's say, 6 months to perform some show. And after those 6 months, they all go on auditions again. What do they need? Headshots, portraits, right? They change their hair, they need portraits. And so you have a huge pool of people that love to be photographed. They're on stage for a reason. They're stage picks, just like, me. You go in front of an audience because you love being seen in a way, and you love singing, you love performing. So they're not shy. So now all of them. Most of them don't have much money, and they're perfectly fine for one of their colleagues to take their portraits.
Of course.
So over the years, if you do this like 10 years or whatever it is, you're taking a lot of portraits, of course, for friends, for fun. But that is a school that the moment you decide, you know what, I retire from stage, I become a photographer. Well, I'm already 20 years into photography and already 10 years into headshots and portraits. So the moment I decided I retire from stage, move to Australia, and I become a photographer, it wasn't just, okay, let's pick up a camera. By then, I actually knew what I was doing. And I proven to myself that I can do this professionally. So that was a very smooth kind of transition, so to speak. So if you want to call it, I'm an overnight success, 20 years in the making. If that makes sense.
That makes total sense. Yeah. Yeah. Especially the way you lay it out. So that sheer repetition was your groundwork, just doing it in the background of your life and your other career. And then.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if people think that working in musical theater is exciting. I mean, the part on stage is very exciting, of course. You know, you have the music, you have your costume, you have your makeup, which I probably should go back to wearing makeup, but um and the applause and, you know, like the audience and everything, that's of course very exciting. And if you're for a young guy, it's very good for your ego as well. You know, I mean, where else do you get an applause? But it also, it teaches you some things, because live music is live. If you're on stage and you mess up, you can't retouch it. There is no Photoshop for a live performance, so you better be good. And if you're going to auditions, you have to be good to get the job. You know, there is no cheating. There is no, uh, you know, if you have an off day, the audience will feel it. The audience will hear it. And so there is a beautiful lesson to be learned of anyone that plays live music or sings on stage or acts on stage. This is life, and every night is different, and you have to bring it. And just because you brought it yesterday means nothing to the audience today. They bought tickets, they spend a lot of money to sit there. So rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. But at the same time, it also becomes very boring, you know, because if you do a show 500, 600, 700 times, I've done one show over 1,000 times. So you wonder, why the heck is the audience laughing? Because you don't find those jokes funny at all anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's so what do? You start during the day. If you're a dancer, well, you're still in the dance studio. But as an actor singer, you get a jail-free card. You got all day to yourself, and you can only do so much shopping. So you start to look for other things to do during the day. So in my case, it's photography. And then I was so bored for a while, even though I've done my shows at night, that I applied to work for a documentary film company called Videofabrik, which is in Baden, Switzerland. And so I walked in there and said, I'm really interested in filmmaking and everything. By the way, I have absolutely no idea, but can I just come in? I don't need any money. I get paid every night. I would just like to sit in. I'm making a murder coffee, by the way. I'm really, really good at making a coffee. And they said, someone that makes a good coffee, you're welcome. We can't pay you. I said, no, that's fine. So I've been working there for about 2 years for free every single day until about 4 o'clock. And then I had to jump into the car and drive to the theater. So funny enough, you learn a lot being sort of at the beginning, being a fly on the wall, at the end, actually sitting there cutting video. And I mean, cutting film, you know, film strips, cut it. If you make a mistake, you have to get the sticky tape out. They had to synchronize music, they had the reel-to-reel tapes, which with a sync cord. So you learn a lot about frame and shutter speed, and you learn a lot about storytelling, because they were specializing in documentary filmmaking. So you sit behind those directors and how they argue about, should we take this edit or should we take that edit, and how does the story change if we bring this interviewee before that person, and if that person says the world is green and the next person says I believe the world is orange, how does the narrative change if we put the orange before the green statement? And you know, these sort of things. You also start to learn how they light those things, how to make it more dramatic or more happy, and all these sort of things. At the same time, in the theater, you start with this beautiful thing, the black stage. There's nothing there, and then they switch the lights on, and they create that atmosphere out of nothing. So you add those two things together, and you think, hold on, that's pretty close to a photo studio, where you start with nothing, and then you add light and you create mood, and then you create some kind of story somehow. And if you add that all together, okay, I don't know how they do it, but it's kind of fascinating. And then you sit there and you do sort of like your apprenticeship, so to speak, by first just making a murder coffee and at the end actually editing because you've learned a few things. And nowadays, video or photography or anything, I believe so much of the stuff that I do now comes simply from the fact that I've had this pleasure of working with people who are just insanely good at what they were doing,
Mm.
and just seeing how they did it, and what, and then asking those stupid questions. I was annoying. I was so annoying. I always want, why? Why do you do this? And then they're nice people and they explain it to you. Like a lighting technician, nobody in a theater, a lighting technician, nobody ever talks to them. So you go to them and say, hey, what is that thing up there? And he said, oh, that's a profile, that's a Fresnel, that's a mover, that's a so and so. They're more than happy to explain everything, because nobody ever wants to know anything from these guys. They always sit up there in their box. It's like next to the sound desk. Nobody talks to the sound engineer. Everybody wants to talk to the guitar soloist on stage. So then you sit in there and go like, okay, show me how that thing works. And then yeah, I believe everything that I know now is just because I had some incredible people around me.
Well, it sounds like you were surrounded by a lot of passion, and you were also you were carrying that passion and exploring your own passion that was connecting with them. I think for creatives, especially, that's a lot of the thread that holds us together, isn't it? It certainly isn't always the paycheck or the easy hours either. So there's got to be something driving this forward. Also, man, I mean, consecutively, and I felt this when I was DJing for 7 years, just playing other people's music, much less, thinking about making my own. It's all fundamentally storytelling. Maybe you feel this, and I've asked other photographers who are into music on the show before. Do you feel like you're using the same part of your brain in photography that you are with music? I mean, obviously they're visual and audio mediums, but fundamentally to me, it feels like you're building a story through structure, through various hooks and all these little tricks we use, whatever the medium.
Yeah, I don't really analyze it, to be honest.
Hmm.
I just, yeah, I don't have an answer to this. For me, it's all a gut feeling.
Hmm.
It's this. I think it's at the beginning it was a mixture between curiosity and boredom. Because if you do the same thing over and over and over again, it becomes boring. At the same time, you wonder what, how does this work, or how does this work? And I don't understand it, but I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And I've always had this. I mean, even at school, I was annoying teachers because I wasn't. I didn't care in the formula. I wanted to understand why the formula. You know, that's just how my brain works. I need to know answers to stupid things. And like my kids absolutely hate playing Trivial Pursuit with me because I just cram a lot of useless information into my brain. It's just, that's just how I've always been. And at the same time, I think I have a good mix of gratitude towards people who then actually take their time to answer all those stupid questions. And like nowadays, God, I wish I would have started photography, as example, in a time when there was YouTube. Wouldn't that have been amazing?
Oh, it would
Like,
have been so much easier. Go on, please.
it's like, eh, and nowadays you can speed up things so much, but nothing compensates for actually doing it yourself. And then you hit a roadblock. And if you then have those people that you can ask, in my case, as I said, a lot I've learned in from those people who edit and produce documentaries, because it is a portrait in a way.
Yeah.
You ask someone a simple question, depending how you light them, how you film them, and in what order, or in what way you present it. You put a little bit of sad music in the background, and the simple statement becomes so much more bombastic. or you put some rhythm behind, and even a sad statement becomes quite uplifting. And that all is gut feeling somehow. But you have to notice this first, and then you have to realize, okay, now I notice it, but how can I now replicate that? And how can I use this to tell my story? Now, a lot of my photos don't have a story nowadays. I mean, if you take a portrait, you can see, you can look into it whatever you want. Oh, what's the story? You're not a documentary filmmaker or this and that and the other. No, but it's still the story of that one person. And maybe my story for a beautiful portrait could be that there's enough, sorry to say it like that, shit going on in this planet. Sometimes it might be really nice to see something beautiful in between.
Yeah.
And the same applies to my dance photography. There is no deep story there most of the time. It's just beauty, it's elegance, it's you know, I guess a mixture of passion and skill that those dancers bring, and then I'll hopefully bring my talent and my skill to the game, and we produce something uplifting, something beautiful. Well, maybe that doesn't seem like that much, but on an emotional level, that's the beautiful music, that uplifting, that changes maybe someone's frown into a smile. And all you need to do is switch on CNN or Fox or whatever it is around the world, and all you see is disaster and complaining and bad, and now we have the COVID and all that sort of stuff. So maybe it's quite beautiful to dumb it down a little bit, so to speak.
To step
And
away, I think, wouldn't that be fair? Excuse me to interrupt, but to
yeah,
step
no,
away
no,
from
no.
it all, breathe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
create, share a little bit of beauty with the world, because the world is not just bad.
Yeah.
It's this yin yang.
Well, isn't that part of the job of art? I mean, it's going to inspire some of the beauty and some of the pain that's going to end up in the news. But at the end of the day, I think it's fundamentally to inspire and activate that other part of the brain that needs to work so that we can deal with what we read in the news and whatever else we have to deal with.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Michelangelo and Da Vinci already had the same conversation. It's like, what's the purpose? At night, I'm going to the graveyard and cut open human beings to study their anatomy, and during the day, I'm I'm painting some gorgeous little picture, um, and it's only this big, and one day it probably hang in the Louvre. Uh, I, the art question, I always try to dodge this one, because there's so many different opinions, and I believe 1,000 years ago they already. Don't you think that 50,000 years ago, when they started with in the caves, and the first one was drawing a deer, don't you think that someone was standing next to it and said, "That's not how a deer looks like"?
That antler is way off.
You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
mean, this is like an endless conversation, and then he will probably go, this is how I feel the deer looks like. Leave me alone." I think that conversation never gets old.
That's true. That's true. I have to ask though, because as you pointed out, you were there originally when they were doing those etchings. So I mean, I figure you were an authoritative source.
I have a bad feeling this has become the clubhouse joke that I was there when they did the first carvings, and I also taught Da Vinci how to mix his paint. Yeah, um, to be honest, I wish I would absolutely not quite give a kidney, but close to. I would love to time travel back into those times, and go into those paint shops and see how they did things, and how the old masters told their students, and the proper meaning of a master. Now you have those titles, you're master of photography and but back then, the real masters that had their workshops and taught them how to do things. Gosh, I wish I could time travel and go and see how they did it, and see a young 16-year-old Da Vinci at the easel.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I think also that brings in, and it's not that far away. We're both old enough to remember it, the age before digital, and a bit of the speed that the planet has taken up. Analog, even within photography, everything you talk about, masters and structure and learning and the apprenticeship, that was a lot stronger before digital came in, through the cameras and also through YouTube in the more recent sense. So I'm actually worried. I've been thinking about that recently too, just that we might be losing something, even though obviously it's not going to disappear overnight, from the fact that there is this whole DIY generation in photography and the arts in general.
yeah. See, I'm torn in that regard, because on one side, I think it's awesome that some barriers are gone. I
Yes.
think the entry levels have been changed. When I started, it was much harder to get into this industry, because you had to go through so much red tape, and
Mm.
it was a very closed off market. Now, with social media, you can publish yourself to the world, no matter what. That you don't need a studio, you don't need expensive gear. You can create some awesome stuff with phones. Um, and so on that side, I think it's brilliant for everyone that is coming up, because they now have a chance, you
Yeah.
know. On the flip side, I see a lot of charlatans. I see a lot of people who believe in fake it before you make it, kind of. I
Yeah.
see a lot of people who call themselves professionals too quickly, and then as soon as they run into any kind of unexpected situation, they're going to fold, because they don't have that in that background. They don't have the hours to say, I'll make it work for you no matter what. So, it's a little bit pros and cons. I really do appreciate that people with talent now have a chance to showcase themselves. I think that's awesome.
Mhm. It is.
If they would only also respect and maybe research a little bit what came before, I think that would only be fair. So I mean, I see it when we have chats on those online forums, or on Clubhouse, or whatever it is, and people don't even know who Ansel Adam is, or Richard Avedon is,
Yeah.
or Cartier-Bresson is. You know, you mentioned the decisive moment, and they have no idea what that is. That doesn't mean you have to copy it, but at least study it, have a look at it, appreciate it, go to a museum, see where the Rembrandt lighting is actually coming from. What is Curaçao? And it would be so easy, because it's all at your fingertips. You can go on YouTube, you can go on Google, it's right there. You don't have to run into the library anymore.
Very
So
much.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old.
That's both of us then, even if you're a little ahead of me. But that's just part of the changing times, isn't it? That's part of this jumping point in our species where we change how we're learning. You mentioned earlier about not wanting to just learn the fact, but actually understand it. And I've come across that before. That's understanding versus just simple retention. Now, because of devices and everything else, we don't have to. I mean, the math is completely different just on that. You don't have to do retention because it's all sitting on your phone. If somebody brings up Avedon, you don't have to know about them. You can just go, oh, okay, 1 minute, and then flick through and do an image search quickly. But to me, that's also part of the loss of it, because I think in the old, here we go, in the old days, back when we
We're
didn't.
not that old.
Yeah. All right. I'll leave it at that. But I think back in the time before, when we were searching information, you actually had to go down to the library to get a pertinent bit of information that went that extra level of authenticity, of detail, whatever. And you had that whole experience of putting your jacket on, going out the door, wandering through, getting to the library, checking in your card, doing the whole thing, finding the book, opening the book, digging through without being able to flip through. And I think fundamentally that builds stronger neurons for the knowledge to stick in. Because not only do you have that fact sitting at you in front of the book, but you have this whole experience that you've been able to tie into it in your brain. And that I think is changing. So I think for photographers and history and such, there's a different priority in the brain towards building the knowledge, because it's just so easy and there's no experience around it to kind of bind it in. I
Yeah,
think for
well,
yeah, please go ahead.
no, I think, you know, I hope with all of this, it doesn't lose its magic. Because like part of the magic for me, and that's what I mentioned before, if you go into a studio and there is nothing and you start to build something and you make all those creative decisions, then oh, I put a light there and I shoot from this angle and I want it a little bit dark and moody, or I want light and airy, or I want this and that and the other. Do I want to make a statement? Do I just want to entertain? And then you find the right settings for it, and then you work with that person to create that mood and that magic moment and that spark in their eyes, and this all has a certain magic to it. I'm wondering if everything becomes automatic, can you really create that magic at some point, or is the magic just created for you? Is it,
Yeah,
so
you
for
touched on
me,
that a minute ago also, with the professional photographer being able to repeat it and be reliable about that. Please continue.
yeah, so for, as I said, for me, it's all a gut feeling. I look at any kind of art, be it a painting, a sculpture, a photograph. I look at it and ask myself, does this do something for me? Right? Either it upsets me, or it puts a smile on my face, or I look at something and, well, wow, that is gorgeous, or maybe, oh, this is a place I really want to visit one day. Whatever it is, it has to create that something in me. Otherwise, it's just a technical exercise. And I see that so often, that you look at a photo and go like, well, it's technically perfectly executed, but it's boring. It doesn't do anything for me. Even if it upsets me, it still means it triggers something in me.
Yeah.
But it needs to trigger something in me. That's what I'm talking about, this magic. When you look at photojournalism, does it have that something special from the 60s, where people, like, it influenced the whole generation to go up onto the streets, and after the Vietnam War and everything, or during the Vietnam War, some of those images that came in, Time magazine and all, it was influential. It really rallied people.
Yeah.
Now, this whole Instagram followers, look at me with my shampoo, I don't, it loses a little bit of that magic, that influence, that gut feeling, that, either creating the acid that comes up when you see something, or the whatever that is. I don't have a word for it. I just call it, like, the magic thing. And I'm just a little bit afraid that we might lose this a little bit in this time of everything automatic. You can do it with a phone. Yeah, it opens doors to a lot of creative people, but I hope they still hone in on the craft.
That makes a lot of sense. It is getting a little diluted, certainly. Do you think it's the audience, the creator, or both?
Well, I believe that most people are not educated to see the difference.
Could you expand on
That,
that?
well, if you have someone who plays the guitar relatively well, they can take that guitar down to the beach and have a bonfire, and everybody has a great time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you compare that to Eric Clapton or Carlos Santana, or one of the greats. Or I can sit down on the piano and play pretty darn well. But if you put Herbie Hancock's next to me, I look like an amateur, like there was no other amateur before. But the question is, do people see that difference from good to amazing? I don't believe so. I believe the majority do not see it. And Instagram and social media has not helped that. I think there is so much mediocre out there that a lot of people are okay with mediocre now. And I believe that it's not because they want to, it's because they don't know any better. I believe there's a lot of people that do not see the difference. And the only way to see the difference is to be educated in that area. So we photographers, we look at the photo and we look at catch lights, rim lights, angles. We look at all of those small little details and go like, oh, that would be so good if only. Or, wow, this is incredible. But the majority of people, they look at a photo and go like, oh, she's very cute. But it might be a shit photo. But because she is very cute, tick. Yeah. Or maybe the girl in the photo or the guy in the photo is not that cute. No, but it might be an incredible photo. So if you study music, if you study guitar, you will hear the difference between the guy that plays and drums at the beach versus, Paco de la Chia. Yeah. It's a massive, massive difference. But does the ordinary punter that doesn't study guitars or music, do they hear the difference? What's the difference between someone who is pretty good at playing the violin versus someone like Nigel Kennedy? And do people hear that difference? Do they hear the difference between a $500 violin and a Stradivari? I don't know. So I believe the same applies to photography, and Instagram and social media doesn't help it.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a ton of sense. You have to kind of be in this world to really get those nuances and that extra level of quality, or just, wow. Do you think there's something we can do as photographers to help this situation? Educating the audience is usually thrown out there. Do you think that's fair and there's a way to do it?
Well, the question is, do we have to? Because there have always been millions of people having canvases and easels at home and painting. And none of them were Picasso, or I would assume most of them were not. That's fine. The problem that I have is once they expect to be hung in the gallery. So I think creating art is beautiful, but do it without the expectation to be hung at the MoMA. And the problem that I see is that now everybody expects to be a professional, being paid, being in the museum, this and that and the other. Well, in that case, become the next Picasso. But that takes 30 years of work. You have to study that bull and try to paint that bull 100 times before you end up doing so with just one stroke like Picasso did. Or if you want to become the next Miro or the next Dali or whatever, these people worked their entire life going through different phases to find themselves. And they always did it for the art and never for the money. And now you have people who say, I bought a camera, I go on Clubhouse or on YouTube to learn a little bit, I want to be paid. I have no problems with people creating art, and they don't have to be the next Eric Clapton. That's not the point. I think it's amazing that they create art, but maybe they have to change their expectations a little bit.
That makes sense. And their attitudes. I've always believed whether I was DJing or whether I'm a photographer, I should be shooting for me, and then the audience will gather around my sound or my look or my feeling or my creativity. If I play to them, fantastic. I might get triple the amount of people, but I'm not really doing something that I think can resonate and hold in the long term, nor really, I mean, for the elusive tag of art, be as much art, because the art should be from the self. It can connect to the audience and be a goal to connect to the audience. But I think if you're doing it with, like you say, an expectation that it's going to be this huge hit and hanging in a gallery, you've got the wrong mindset. You're not looking inward, you're looking outward, aren't you?
Well, if a musician would know exactly how to produce a hit record, wouldn't every single musician only produce hit records? Nobody knows that formula. I mean, you take any sort of hip band, they have a number one hit, and then they have 3 flops, and then before you know it, they have another hit, and they go like, how come this one and not, you know, there is no such formula. The only thing you can do is be yourself, and hopefully that is the formula. But for me, it's, we can try to, coming back to your question, we can try to educate, but I think we're running a little bit against walls. We're trying to push elephants, where maybe we just have to let it go. Maybe the elitish thinking that we have of, oh, we are the masters of photography, we know how to do it, and you all. No, maybe we just have to let it go. Maybe we just have to say, we do our thing for those who appreciate what we do, and for those who want to go to that next level. Or maybe, as we both do, also go and more educate people, but not the broad masses in, hey, this is bad, or this is mediocre, or this is not well executed. No, maybe help the new guard of people who are coming up to learn to see and then to execute those differences. Because at the end of the day, art is art, and everybody can hold a brush and put some oil on a canvas, but only a few have the quality to ever become a museum artist. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't do it, because it's beautiful to do it.
You should, yeah, I can see that. Huh? This went.
Am I going too deep? Am I going too deep?
This is what I like on the show. A little bit of deep soul searching, belly gazing, and then we go up for air. Well, man, you raise a lot of relevant points, and this is why I love listening to you on Clubhouse, and why I wanted to have a chat. This is going better than I hoped, actually. Well, there's a few things I could poke on that. I mean, especially just reaching that next stage of quality and everything else. I mean, quality is a little bit subjective, and that's been explored in pop culture and philosophy, everything else. If any of the listeners haven't, I think, Stephan, maybe you might know Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Have you ever read that book?
No.
Oh,
I am not a petrol head at all.
Well, it's actually not a petrol head book, so it's worth checking out, because it's a book about a few philosophical points, but part of it is quality. So that's why I mentioned that book, because it discusses the whole abstract nature of quality, how it's done to the individual, and so many other things. But I guess without getting into book club on that, I mean, feel free to check it out, or I'll email you. I'll email you a copy if you need.
Do it.
I will. You got to read that book. I guess on the quality side of things, I mean, this is something that I feel, just to change track a little bit, in your photography work in particular, through your dance photography. I mean, it's going to be a cheesy pun, but it really dances through the frame. You've got this, like you mentioned, an elegance that they're projecting as dancers, that I find you capture in the frame. What is that? Oh, that opens up a whole barrel of worms. I mean, do you think that's one of your driving forces as a photographer, part of the voice within that's looking to capture that quality? Because you said earlier that at the end of the day, you're only really talking about the person, but I think you're also talking about the elegance of the medium of dance, and your shooting has a real clarity to it. So, do you think that's part of your drive from the inside of what you want to catch on that particular end of your work?
Well, first of all, I mean, with the dances, or especially ballet, I'm just extremely impressed with what they can do.
Mm.
I mean, they're elite athletes on a professional level. They're elite athletes. The amount of training they do, the elegance that they bring, and the ease that they portray. You know, it looks so easy what they do, yet it is normal. We mere mortals would break our backs, and then we would literally not only need an oxygen tank next to it, but we also need a chiropractor to put us together before the ambulance takes us, you know. And they just do it, and they do it 20 times or 30 times, and they are precise. They're so well trained. They're so precise that I can say, okay, how about we do this? And they show me, and I'll take a photo, one photo, and then we go to the computer, and then we look at it and say, okay, that was good. The height was perfect that you jumped. This is all cool. This is all cool. Have a look at the knee. Could that knee just go a tiny little bit further that way? And have a look at the heel. The heel just a little bit forward, and then get your chin down a little bit. We normal people wouldn't have a clue how the heck we just jumped before. But they go back, jump again, leave everything locked in as it was, and make those fine adjustments. You take your second photo. And then you look at it and go, okay, that's perfect, but now we need some expression in your face as if it's the easiest thing in the world. How about you look to that light over there? Everything else, do it the same. You can lock in your camera pretty much. They go back to their spot, and they do it exactly. And you can overlay them, those photos. They will have the same height. Everything is exactly, but now with expression. That is insane. That is insane. So, but that means that they are training from an age of 3-4 years old until they're 18, 19, and then they go overseas if they're good enough to become a professional ballet dancer and join a company. So when they put this much effort in training full time from 13 or 14 years old, if they put that much effort in to train for 6 hours every single day, I need to bring my A game. There is just no way that I just snip them away. Like, oh yeah, click, click, click. No, 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 no. If they bring this much talent, this much athleticism, I can't even say that word, but that's okay for a Swiss person. If they bring this much elegance and willingness and power and beauty, I need to match that. Otherwise, it's an uneven game. It's an unfair game. So I now have to bring the same with light, with angles, with ideas and post processing and everything. I have to match their game. So they're bringing their A game. I have to bring my A game. And one of these things that has to be in my arsenal is that I have to speak the same language as they do. I have to understand the different terms. We have to discuss, how do you get into this jump? Do you jump from, let's not talk about ballet, but I need to match that. And I need to match their grace and their beauty with my grace and beauty, not here, but through my lens, through my lighting. They train so hard to have, every muscle under control. Well, if I flat light them, you don't see any muscles. That's what they're working on so hard. So I have to find a light to illustrate that. So there's so many small little things. I need to make sure that the ballet technique is right. I have to make sure that artistically it's right. I have to make sure that I showcase their amazing bodies. And I have to make sure that the photo overall is interesting, even to someone who is not interested in ballet. That's my job. So I have a little bit of a brick of expectations on my shoulders as well. And now you marinate those two, you get a pretty good outcome. And now we showcase something that fascinates me, that I'm heavily impressed by, something that I can't do, but I can do my part to it. And to me, that's always, if Sting is on stage, and sorry, I make a lot of music references. I'm forever
Please.
a muso.
Please.
But if Sting is on stage and has and with his bass and just goes doom 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 doom, that is okay. But the moment the drums kick in, out of nowhere, that goes like that, and the whole audience goes like that. It's not the drums, it's not the bass, but them together make the whole audience go. And for me, that's exactly what I believe in my photography is. I always have that. I always say the camera looks both ways. I honestly believe that I have to match what happens in front of me. And if I have the most beautiful man or the most beautiful woman or the most incredible dancer in front of me, okay, they're bringing their A game. That means I have to up my ante on my side.
That makes a lot of sense, man. That makes total sense. You also touch into something that I think is critical, and I have to ask you about while I have you on the show, because you do a lot of talking and coaching about confidence in public speaking, don't you? That's another little secret hat that you wear.
Oh
next
God,
to the
you know too much about me. Yeah.
I know this is the downside of interviewing the clubhouse people. Well, I mean, I think I've always thought for photography, before we get into the communication quite so much, I've always found photography, and this might be a pun to your side of the world, is a dance between the subject and the photographer. We're both equally part of the photo, even when you put egos aside and everything else. So I think that to get that dance going, it becomes a lot about communication and just really getting the flow going together, if you will. Would you say that's fair? I think that's how I feel when I'm taking photos of people. There's a dance going on. There's this connection that you're trying to get.
Yeah, look, I 100% agree. I mean, you have people. We all. Let's put it this way: we all have feelings, right? Well, most of us. Well, some people that we might have heard on certain social medias might have more or less, but generally speaking, we all have feelings. And if you are in front of a camera, that's a weird spot to be, because you now have to produce. And even if you practice at home, if a young girl is practicing her poses or whatever, after about 5 minutes, she will have one thought in her head: what the hell shall I do with my hands? I did everything. I've done them all. Now, what do I now rinse and repeat? So it is totally our job as photographers to communicate. And if I can give someone the confidence to try out new things, to be loose, to be happy, to enjoy this whole process, well, then they get that, they in front of the camera have the freedom to explore this as well. But that confidence has to come from me. So I have to be the energy. I have to be the downer if I want to create a sad image. And it doesn't just mean that I put on some sad music in the background or some uplifting music or make some bad dad jokes. To me, it's, you have to bring your A game. So I have to be the communicator. I have to bring the energy non-stop. And the more people are on set, the more energy I have to bring. So there's a makeup artist, there's a stylist, there's a hairstylist, there's a client, there's the guy from the agency, and there's always someone in the background where I have no idea who brought that person along, but he's sitting on the couch anyway. And then you have the model in front of you, and she needs help. No matter how good she is, she needs to know, what are we doing? How do we do this? What is the planned outcome, etc. So I need to bring that energy. The moment I drop it, it's all over. And I need to be goofy, and I need to, if I show them a bad pose, everybody is cracking up, but it gives the person in front of me the permission to be funny as well. Well, they all know they will never look as stupid as I do when I pose, so they're already in the bonus. But I need to bring that. Absolutely. That is my job. And so for me, it's all about communicating. And it's also surround yourself with other people who are brilliant at communicating. You wouldn't believe how often someone comes into the studio who had initially a bad day. You know, they might have some arguments with their boyfriend, or the coffee is not hot enough that they picked up on the way, or maybe it's too hot, or whatever it is. And they walk into the studio. So I need a makeup artist who is really good, not just at makeup, but with people. Because they're sitting down for 1.5 hours. Before they even step in front of the camera, they're already changed. Because that makeup artist is a really good communicator who can really lift up that person, who has great conversations. And for me, it helps to learn a little bit about that person as well. Instead of jumping straight in front of the camera, I talk to them about what they like and what kind of music they like, and this and that and the other, and talk about whatever comes up. But you create rapport with that person. You create a certain amount of trust. That's what the makeup time is for. It's not just to put mascara on or lipstick or eyeshadow. No, it's to create a human to human connection. So the moment you step in front of a camera, you don't have to introduce yourself anymore. They know that I'm a little bit weird, and I'm making some strange comments at times. So we have established that. We had 1.5 hours time to establish that. So when we go in front of the camera, and I say to them, all right, how about you do this? And they just look at it like, okay, Stephan, that looks stupid. I'm like, I know, let's try. I've established that connection with that person already. So we are no longer strangers. We have established that we are in this together, and I'm on their side. I'm not just the guy behind the camera that says, do something, and I just push a button. No, we established that we are a team, and we're going to create some absolutely incredible pictures together. Not one or the other. No, together. And so I believe communication is so important. And I hear people saying, oh, I want to become a portrait photographer, but I'm an introvert. Well, you have to work on yourself. I'm sorry to break it down to you. If you're an introvert and you're shy and you don't want to talk to people, sit up on a mountain, shoot landscapes, sing Kumbaya to yourself. But if you want to be a portrait photographer, you have to be a communicator. You have to, because the person in front of you, I say it again, deserves your A game.
Great way to look at it. Great way to look at it. Thank you. And on a related note, since you are so spiffy and sharp on the communication, give us it's super cheesy, but give us your top tip for a nervous photographer on their first portrait shoot. Let's throw a bone to the beginners. What would you say as the one magic tip without knowing the person? What would be the best piece of advice for someone who's a little introverted but has to do a portrait shoot?
Find some one-liners.
One-liners,
not jokes. No jokes. One-liners. You have to, if you're struggling for words, then the best thing to do is to quote something, but at the same time you want to make it yourself. So write down some one-liners. What do you do if something looks boring? Or what do you do if something is not working out? Or what do you do if you need a break? And you're afraid to communicate this. You need some one-liners, something that you're prepared, right? I mean, our mutual friend Peter Hurley has a whole book of them.
Hurleyisms.
Looks like a deer in a headlight. Are you out for lunch? Or all the things that he says. But that's him. He has that personality. He's a little bit in your face. I love that guy because I have a very similar humor than he has. But that's not for everyone. For some people, that might be too much too aggressive. But he can pull it off because he does it with this huge smile and with his persona, right? So it's a perfect match for him to ask, oh, look at that picture. Clearly out for lunch. Someone else might find that quite offensive, So you have to find whatever it is that works for you and then practice it, because at the end of the day, if you're the best builder in the world, you need an architect that tells you what kind of a house to build. And if you're a photographer, you need to tell your model or the person that you photograph what to do or what you expect from them. And you have to help them to achieve that. And if you just say, okay, well, yeah, you got a sexy body. How about you wear very little and then you bend over that car bonnet or stand in front of that graffiti wall. Yeah, you might become an influencer. Hip, hip, hooray. But if you want to become a serious portrait photographer, you have to work with people and you have to get over that shyness. And that is a process, I understand. But if you want to become Picasso, it's also a process. And you want to create a sculpture, well, you also start with a marble block and probably by the end with bloody hands. It's a process.
Yeah. And getting over yourself is not the worst process to take up in life for photography or otherwise.
In general, I think not taking yourself too seriously is a very good start, a very good place to start.
Very much we're on the same vibe there. That's also why I like self-depreciating humor. You make fun of yourself before anyone else gets a chance and you keep it on the ready to keep yourself grounded.
Yeah, well, as I said, there's a lot of I mean, I can only talk about my two areas where I work, which is, obviously ballet photography and portraiture or high-end portraiture. How about that?
Fancy.
No, it sounds fancier, right? It just adds a zero at in the quote at the end. Well, we all have to eat somehow. We all have to eat. Now I totally forgot what I was meant to say, but that's okay.
Oh, that's okay. That's totally part of it.
No, then with taking yourself seriously, it's if you take yourself too serious, then you make it about yourself. But we're not photographing ourselves. We're photographing the subject in front of us. So it's all about them. So if you take yourself too serious, well, you make the photo shoot about yourself. That's when you become arrogant. Oh, I am so-and-so. I'm doing that and that. You are just my muse. Yeah, well, I don't know how well that works. In the past, it might have worked in the 60s, and then you had an orgy and the drug party afterwards. But I think nowadays, thank God the times have changed.
I like that's beautiful. I don't know what to say to that. You saw that the hour is running out and you just wanted to get to that.
Hey, let me entertain you.
You're doing wonderful, man. I wish I had you for a photo shoot. That's all I got to say about that. I think we'd have fun and you'd get the full smile. All right. Well, Stefan, I could talk to you for hours about this, and this is part of why I enjoy Clubhouse that and you being on there, so we can hear these pearls of wisdom, if you will. Mate, I'll let you go about your evening over there in Australia. We didn't even get to how a boy from the Swiss Alps gets over to the sunny coast of Australia, but you are off the hook. I actually happen to have lived in Brisbane too, so I can make that
All
back
right.
crack. Yeah, I was out there for a year. That's actually where I picked up photography. My job visa said change employers every 3 months, so I thought maybe I can do better than a waiter. Borrowed an old FE2 from Nikon with a 20 mil lens and got paid from the second roll of film.
All right.
So
See, so you were an overnight success, not 20 years in the making.
that first push of the neon sign going up saying Andy follow photography was the beginning, but not overnight success. 20 years in the making, very much. And the last 10 years of doing my photo tour and such was probably the main glory there to get that off the ground.
Yeah, and see, it comes down to exactly the same point again, right? Communication. How can you educate or photo tour
Yeah.
if you're not a communicator? You have to.
Yeah.
It's it's at the end of the day, I think that's what we're doing, be it with photos or when we take the photos or create the photos by the way we communicate with people and eventually, hopefully, communicate with the final result. And because you mentioned public speaking before, I think there it's exactly the same as well. I mean,
Mm.
the reason why I started public speaking, because you threw that question in about 15 minutes ago and I didn't answer it. I'll give you a short 2-minute version of it. See, I take notes. I actually listen.
Very
Like
good. Yeah.
I'm actually listening. I'm actually on your side. See,
He is present,
together
folks.
we're doing this together, right?
Yes.
So the reason why I now do this is because who do you listen to when it comes to road safety? The police guy who does this, or the person who nearly lost their lives in a car accident?
Hmm.
You listen to the guy who just barely survived. So when you talk about false body image or depression from social media, who do you listen to? A feminist or the photographer who actually produces those images that make people feel like that? I am guilty as charged at producing images that produces the wrong idea of what an ideal look is to young people.
Hmm.
I'm guilty. I produce those highly polished magazine photos that you see in Vogue, and people look at it, young people look at it and go like, but I don't look like that. I don't have a body like that. Well, you know why they don't look like that? Because they have not been posed, styled, photographed, lit, retouched, produced. That's why. But that's not how they see it. They look into the mirror and feel bad about themselves because they cannot stack up in comparison. So, who do you listen to? Someone who is constantly against everything, or someone who goes and says, I actually really enjoy producing those images. And now I'm going to tell you how we do this so that you don't feel bad about it because models are made.
Hmm.
They are not naturally like that. Right. And so I started more and more. Of course, I have a stage background, so I'm very used to being on stage. I have no fear of the spotlight or the microphone. But at the same time, not just talking about photography or workshops, and which I do as well, but I also started to create several campaigns to inform teenagers or young adults
Hmm.
about how social media actually influences your social state, your mental state, your feelings, and why that is, and show them the data. And the data is shocking. Depression is real in young people. Body
Hmm.
dysmorphia is real. Body uh what do you call false body image is real.
Yeah.
But who do you listen to if you're at high school and there's some person coming in to talk to you for an hour? Who do you listen to? The person who generally is against everything. Everything is bad. Advertising is bad. This and that is bad. No, nobody wants to listen. Nobody takes that person seriously. But when I walk in there and go like, I just love creating these images, then people
Mm.
go like, what? He's meant to be against it. He's talking he's talking about the influence, and he actually does that. Yeah, because now you listen, and I tell you how we do it and why we do it and why you should not care.
Hmm. That's good, man. That's a heavy topic too. One near and dear to my heart too, because as we know, this is all over the industry. Do you show the before and after examples? I assume these are public talks at schools by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I do a lot of talks at high schools, universities.
Yeah.
Before COVID, I actually had a whole tour planned where I was about to do this overseas, but then
Ah,
you know the
COVID.
funny lockdown came into place for the last 18, 19 months, whatever it was. I forget time is running. But yeah, so there is a program that goes with it, and the Australian government jumped onto it many years ago when I started doing this, and then
Ah,
they body positive movement started in Australia based on that, and so we've done a lot in the background that people have no idea about
I've
because
never heard you
it's it,
talk about this.
no, I don't do that
Yeah,
because whenever I'm on Clubhouse, I'm not there to promote myself. I don't sell myself. I don't talk about myself.
very true.
I'm going onto social media, hopefully to learn, and if I can, to help others. I'm just not. I I never promote myself for what I do.
Huh. And have you done any of this talking about this online? I'm curious if there's any campaigns people can look up
No,
on YouTube.
no. I need see that needs to be done in person because first of all, I pick someone that in the audience and I'll transform them while I'm doing the speech.
You
So
do a
I'll
live
pick
shoot,
someone. Yeah, well, more than that. So I'll pick someone that is more looks like a little flower on the wall that is that's comes across a little bit shy and probably not being the superstar. It's not the super cheerleader, the hottest chick in the school,
right?
right? And at the end, I will hand over a print to that person where she looks like a freaking movie star. And that all happens in between me talking about data and this and that. The other, come sit down here. Da, 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 da. By the way, this is Maria. She will do your makeup. And da 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 da. All right. How do you feel? You're good? Yeah? Feels a little bit awkward here in front of everybody sitting here getting your makeup done. Should we close the curtain? You know what? Let's close the curtain. Let's them not have a look. By the way, here's my phone. Do how about you create some awesome TikTok for me? All right. So everybody, you build it in.
Huh.
Now you create suspense. Now the whole audience is like, what is going on behind that curtain? Of course, that curtain was planned, but you can create something out of this. And at the end of the day, you not only made that person's day, you informed a lot of people, you shared a lot of data. When you look at the suicide rate in young people because of the influence of social media,
Yeah.
the bullying and everything that goes with it, self-deprecation, etc.,
Mm.
it's serious, right? So sorry to bring that up. I just wanted
Don't be.
to answer the question that you brought up before about public speaking, why I'm doing this, because I'm passionate about showing always two sides, which comes back to where we started our conversation. I want to know why, not just how, but why. And I ask myself, why do I produce those fake images? Because they are fake. Let's fake it. Let's face it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What we produce is fake. That
It's
doesn't
an
mean
ideal.
retouched. That doesn't mean photoshopped. It means that if someone has a big nose, by moving the light a little bit, changes the shadows and that nose becomes bigger or smaller. We're faking it already just by moving the light. We're helping people to look their absolute best. If someone has a crooked nose, well, I'm not putting the light on an angle where we see that. No, I put the light on an angle where the nose looks straight.
Well, you're
Without
storytelling,
photo,
but without telling the story of that crooked nose. So yeah, very much.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, so if we if we pick a certain lens, we're deciding: do we want to compress the image, or do we widen the image? Do we want to make the proportion look in a certain way? Most people have no understanding what that actually means. But we are changing reality, even though we might never use Photoshop at all. We are distorting reality by how we shoot, what gear we use, what angle we shoot, where the light is, what kind of light it is, what kind of makeup, and of course, outfit and everything, what pose. We are distorting reality from the word go.
Mm,
But that's not what people see. People see the final glorious wow. And if I
that's
can share with them what goes into that, and maybe even give them a tip or two how they can produce even more amazing selfies, maybe that's an added bonus. Who knows?
yeah. Yeah. Add to their self-confidence by showing them their better side or how to find it for themselves. Absolutely. And
And to
throw in a
find the light.
performance on top of it while you're on stage making everyone educated. I love it. I really
Yes.
love it. You're sliding it in under the fooling around and everything else. The smoke and mirrors around the data. That's what's helping become the means of communication to communicate all this to the kids and help them feel better about it.
Yeah, I mean that's one of my key talks that I do, but I mean there's others, but just because you asked, why do you do this? I
Yeah,
do this because I feel it's important that we do this. We have to play with open cards.
absolutely, absolutely. Oh, I love hearing about that, man. That's a cause near and dear to my heart. It's something that I'm not super in love with in photography all the time. Is that the fact that the story we're projecting isn't always the story at hand, or at least it's a certain angle of it with clever lighting, a lens choice, or whatnot. Huh. I could talk to you more, but I should let you go because I know you have an evening to enjoy on a Friday over there on the Gold Coast. Before I do, though, Stefan, I have to ask you the one question that I've asked every single person who's passed through the doors of Photo Tour Bruges. People who've joined me on Clubhouse and my weekly club, also called That Photo Feeling, and here on the show, That Photo Feeling. And that is simply, my friend, in its abstract, open ended way of this question: how do you feel about your photography?
In progress.
In progress. Growing, always growing.
Always I just love the term in progress. That
Hmm.
for me is just a summary of everything I do, musically, personally, artistically, photographically. I hope it will forever be in progress because I'm in a well in a month, nearly in a month, I'll be 55, and I still have a few years to go. And I hope I will still learn something on my second last day. On my last day, I just want cuddles. But on the second last day, I hope I still figure something new out or have some idea. And if that means that on that day, then I on the piano and play something new, or find a new chord structure, or create a new picture, or whatever it is, I hope that will never change. Because often people think, oh, you're teaching workshops and you're doing those high-end photos and this and that and the other. You have it all sorted out. But I don't like to have it sorted out. You know, I want to learn. I want to change. I want to. I don't know. I'm easily bored.
You
It's
want the
like,
stimulation. You
well,
want those neurons to keep firing in curiosity.
yes, and also I never want to become one of those arrogant people who believe that they know it all. I still have lots to learn, and I sometimes create something like, when you see your photo for the first time in Vogue. Of course, you're all excited and you go to the newsstand and you buy it and you open it up, and then you take your iPhone and you take a photo of your photo on the table, and yeah. But sometimes you just have to then go, okay, you know what? That's a kind of a tick in the box, but how about I'll try to find the 1965 Vogue and look at those images and I wonder how did they do it? And am I on that level yet? And then you go, nope, let's go back to the drawing board. We're not quite there yet. Damn it. All right. Well, we got the tick in the box, but no. And then you try the next best thing. And that's why I say in progress. For me, it always has to be in progress because I don't think I will ever believe that I have arrived.
I like the way you're looking at things, Stephan. I appreciate this time, man. I could keep you here all day, but it's Friday evening over on the Gold Coast, so I would be a bad boy if I kept you from it. Before you do get out of here, Stephan, one last thing. Please let people know where they can find you in the various mediums and so forth. It'll be listed in the description, but please plug away.
It's very, very simple. I mean, you find me under my name pretty much everywhere. My website, if you can spell my name correctly, or at least my last name, if you like James Bond and you like the champagne that he drinks, that would be Bollinger, Bollinger. Go and buy yourself a bottle. That is my last name. My name is not Bond, but my name is at least Bollinger. So if you go to bollinger.co, you will find my website, which, by the way, desperately needs updating. So maybe give it a month or so until it's actually
We all say that every time.
I said the same thing about 3 years ago, and I haven't changed anything at least for about 5. So it's very, very outdated. But yeah, look, people find me everywhere, and I love when people connect, especially now when we're all so separated by this international virus nonsense. Not that it's nonsense. It's real, people. It's real, but it's still anyway. Yeah, I love when people slide into my Instagram or say hello on Clubhouse, or I really, really enjoy if we can produce a little bit of community, especially now that we're so much separated.
Yeah. It's been part of the joy of Clubhouse that I've gotten to know so many photographers, including yourself, and feel that community coming a little bit closer, despite or maybe because of this whole COVID thing going down. That's oh so joyous.
Yeah,
Well,
it's sad that we need a pandemic to create such community, but at least we are creating that community. Would have been nice if we could have done that without.
it would be, but coulda, woulda, shoulda, and at least we're getting something good out of this, which is a little bit closer. Definitely.
Could have, should have. One day I need to hear some of your music, and I hope you're having an awesome day as well.
I wish you the same, and I also wish to hear some of your music too, my friend. I want to plug those into my ears one day, so I'll get on that.
Well, the piano is right over there, but you can't afford me, so I will not.
Oh, I see. I guess I did use up all my pennies getting you on air. So yeah, that's fair.
No, that's the easy excuse for me not to completely embarrass myself. So if I say you can't afford me, that is a good way for me to sneak out
Duck around the back. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. Unfortunately, I've known you from Clubhouse long enough that I've caught you firing up the ivory keys already, so I know you're not rubbish. Don't even try it.
Oh,
Hey,
bugger.
yeah, exactly. And speaking of Clubhouse, it'll also be linked in the description. You speak regularly at Andy Sullivan's High Achiever Club, don't you? So I think that's also worth a
Yeah.
mention because that's where you get into the confidence, public speaking side of things that I've also found valuable. Look at that. I'm
Yeah.
doing your plug-in for you just because I love you so much.
Hey, I'm not, as I said, look, I'm not very good at plugging myself. I like to, I don't know. I let see, that makes me nervous. I'm just not good at blowing my own trumpet, that's all. I like to entertain people with results. It's not about me, it's about my work.
Yeah. Well, you could, my friend. Your work is really beautiful, from the talking to the photos to beyond. And I appreciate this time. Thank you again, Stephan.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, all right, all right. There is that beautiful chat that I had with Stephan Bollinger that I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, because damn it, that is a fine fella. His photography is sublime and beautiful and well worth checking out, as is pretty much everything he does, as far as I've noticed, from the public speaking talks and consultations, either on Clubhouse or privately, to his workshops that he also holds in the photographic way. And just generally, he's a mensch, fine human being. Pleasure to have him to myself for a good hour and a bit and find out what's going on in Stephan's life here on That Photo Feeling. Now, beyond the chat, there's only so much to say. I've been thankfully shooting over the last week and keeping busy on that side of things. A little bit more than recent times, as I've talked about on the show, with just some quiet times on the photography and otherwise. So with the, Winter Glow Light Festival, or Wintergloed Light Festival, as I like to say, it's been nice inspiration to be out there and shooting over the last few days. There's not been that much client work, although strangely enough, there has been a few phone calls more than normal lately, so I must be doing something right over the last little while. But I've been actively shooting in this night light festival over a couple nights from the opening, as well as to a couple nights later when the weather was good and the rain was low, as well as the wind being nice and peaceful, which I like for night photography. And I mention it partly to let you know what I've been up to, and you can see it on my Instagram feed at Phototour Bruges, linked in the description, as well as in a link to the Wintergloed Festival. But also a recommendation to check it out if you're in the area. It's running every day from 5 till midnight around our beautiful city, a 4-kilometer route that you can check out. And just make sure that you have your Corona Safe ticket as well as a mask, because you will be required at certain points to present those things. But otherwise, you'll have 4 kilometers of well-spaced out outdoors in a gorgeous city to really see some beautiful light art in a beautiful, beautiful city. Done really, really beautifully. I have to say, this edition, being in its 3rd year now, is really nice, really tight, and I guess really right. So that's what I got on that side of things. That's basically where I've been keeping busy on the photography, aside from a couple calls that seem to show some promise, which I hope come through. Touch wood and can't say more without jinxing it. But I guess next to that, I'm mostly busy working the podcast. Like I said, it's freeform for episode schedule releases, so could be in a week, could be in 3 weeks, usually on a Wednesday or Thursday. And working on my YouTube channel a little bit, or doing some preparation, getting my next couple of photo books ready, because those are taking a little longer than I expected, but they are coming along nicely. Both my Croatia manifest about holiday and relaxing and recharging, as well as my next Bruges book, which has to do with water reflections, and something I've been working on for about 6 years now at least. And I'm looking forward to putting a cap on both of those and getting those out there in the world. And I'll be talking about them on the podcast either in solo ways or with guests maybe up to the same things, or maybe just guests doing their thing in photography, but I find them worthy talking to. So I hope you enjoy what's coming up on the podcast. And, as I said at the top of the show, make sure to subscribe, especially with this loose release schedule that I'm doing, so that I feel the full enjoyment of putting out this content my way, not the highway. So, that is what I have for this episode, friends. Let's talk soon, and I hope you are well until then. I'm Andy McSweeney of Andy McSweeney Photography, Photo Tour Bruges, the top daily walking tour here in beautiful Bruges since 2012, 10 years coming up, and the podcast, live stream, etc., so forth, That Photo Feeling, which you can check out on all the usual networks, etc., so forth. Thanks for listening, folks. Now you know what to do. Get out there and get shooting.